Oh, sorry, just doing a little yoga. Hi, this is going to be a good one today. You're going to like this. This will finish off our first section under personality. You're going to get a review and you're going to get a quiz that'll be available to you next week on both of them. I might post a review tomorrow, see how it goes. But this will be a fairly kind of a shortened version of what we normally would do. So basically, Freud and Jung will be the focus here. Okay, so to start, we talk about Carl Jung, and if you're on your outline, you should be on page 3 here with all the pictures. Carl Jung was a Swiss dude who was Freud's main, star pupil, I guess, and they worked together for years, and then they, like a lot of pupils and teachers, they kind of split after a while. And Jung basically thought that he believed in the unconscious, the id and all that stuff, but he also believed in the past. It wasn't just a person's experience; it was the past, like this ancestral past. And he got very much into mysticism and all that. It was pretty cool, actually. And he came up with this idea called the collective unconscious, which if you look at your outline there, it is. Okay? Now I'm going to read you a definition that actually works pretty well here, and I'll sort of explain this, but a deposit of ancestral memories from millions of years that is shared by all of humankind. So we all have basically the same collective unconscious. Just take the collective unconscious and add to what you do and have, and that's it. Okay, so picture everybody that's ever lived, all the things that have happened to them, all the memories, all the stories, all the movies, all the TV shows, all the epic, Jason and the Argonauts and Greek mythology, all that stuff is all in the collective unconscious, which we have the ability to tap into. Which he explained, that's why we have so many stories that are similar. When you think about something like, Greek and Norse and Roman mythology, they kind of connected, but they're all fairly similar. There's like the main god, and there are these other gods, and then these heroes and villains and so on and so forth. And to this day, we get a lot of these stories, even if cultures haven't met, there's still a lot of similarities. I don't want to get into this too much, but there are a lot of stories. You've heard of Odysseus, possibly. You've heard of Buddha, obviously. You've heard of a guy named Zoroaster. If not, he's interesting to look up. The Egyptian god Horus. Those 4, as an example, just off the top of my head, were all born around the end of December. They were all born to a virgin. They were all driven out of their homeland. They were all unaccounted for a certain period in their teens. They all came back to their homeland around age 30. And except for Odysseus and Buddha, I guess, they were all, these guys were also killed or persecuted. So there's a lot of similarities to Jesus, and I'm not saying they're made up. What I'm saying is, though, that according to Jung, that they're dipping into that same well of story, of myths and ideas to come up with these stories. And that there's a reason they have similarities. Okay? So that's the collective unconscious. And from that, all of our stories, all of our memories, all of our ideas about, what's important, how we live life, and so on and so forth, that's where they come from. Okay? So if you have any questions on that, let me know, because the next thing builds off of that. And some of you probably know this, you've heard of this, but where it's got the pictures, you can't tell that's Han Solo and Leia, and then Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi in those pictures. But a lot of Star Wars themes are based on Jungian psychology, believe it or not. And Jung believed in this, what he called archetypes. And you see it there in front of your notes, that are buried in this collective unconscious. And there are these characters or these feelings or these urges or forces, I guess. Think about the force. The force is with you. That's basically the collective unconscious, as I understand it. But anyway, in this unconscious, there are these memories that are called archetypes. And they form the basis of all these stories that we have, including movies and stuff today. And you should be able, as we go through these, think of hundreds of these things. Okay? So what I'm going to do, your paper has 5. I'm going to give you 7 of the main archetypes. And I'll just go through these pretty quickly, give you a couple of examples, but I'll rely on you to come up with other examples. And you will be responsible for that. Keep that in mind. Okay? So here we go. The first archetype is called the mother. Okay, we'll go ladies first. The mother symbolizes, I'm going to give you what the name of it, what they symbolize, and then some examples. Okay, so the mother symbolizes the miracle of life, for obvious reasons. Think about things like sun. When you see the sun in a movie or see the sun in a story of somehow playing a big part, that's like, it's like the mother archetype. Warmth in general, safety, home, hearth. You know what the hearth is, right? Think about old houses where the fireplace was the center of attention because that's where the warmth was. Well, that's when you see a home in a story like that, that is mother. Characters in literature, Mother Goose, Mother Nature. You should be able to think of plenty of movies where you've got this mother figure in these movies that it's positive and warm and loving and so on and so forth. Okay? Second one, father archetype, symbolizes power and authority, often shown in form of violence, storms and winds, war. So think of anything associated with war, like Ares or Mars, if you know your mythology. The fury of animals. Maybe think about those wolves that attacked the beast in Beauty and the Beast or something like that. You've also got Santa Claus in some ways, not really violence, but power for sure. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. Zeus. Things like that. Okay. The third one is the hero archetype. This is one that's usually pretty fun in stories. The deliverer, the savior, saving people, saving a person, so on. So they're representing that. Hercules, Odysseus, Perseus, all those guys in mythology. Han Solo, for sure, in Star Wars is the guy, because he's not necessarily moral, but he comes in and, without Han Solo, Luke Skywalker gets killed in the first episode, if you've seen those Star Wars. And he comes in, even though he was selfish and all that, he came in and did what he had to do. Moses, delivering the people, the Jewish people from bondage in Egypt, comes to mind here. And, think superhero movies. It should be pretty obvious who those guys are. Lots of them kind of fighting for that role, for sure. Okay. Often very common. Could be females. Think someone like, maybe Mulan comes to mind here. Wonder Woman. Remember, she saves the men, which is, used to be a big deal, not as much anymore. But anytime you've got that going on, Moana, for more current reference. Fourth, we have the wise man. And this is often represented by a teacher or a sage or a prophet, fortune teller, things like that. Doesn't have to be a man. If you guys know Pocahontas, think about Grandmother Willow is a real good example there. Probably the grandma in Moana, the one that always behind the back, with the grandmother in Mulan. This would also be Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars. This is probably your prophets, Ezekiel and Isaiah in the Bible. That kind of thing. I don't know, lots, anybody that's like an advisor, something like that. Maybe Indiana Jones' father, if you know those stories in Raiders of the Lost Ark series, that kind of stuff. Often a side character, but still they're very important. Obi-Wan Kenobi, pretty darn important in Star Wars. Fifth, you have the Shadow. And the Shadow could be several things here, but normally it is an animal archetype a lot of times, and it's kind of the dark side of one's personality. So it could be the same person. If you guys watch Star Wars, when Luke's getting trained and he goes into that cave to fight what he thought was Darth Vader, and then he fights him, then he kills him, and he takes his mask off, and it's him. So that's the dark side of him. So the dark side of the Force. If you know your literature, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Mr. Hyde being the dark side, Dr. Jekyll being the hero. Anytime you've got that, maybe if you know your Lord of the Rings, the Smeagol guy, as opposed to the other one, I forget, not Dobby, Gollum, whichever one's the bad guy. But this is, Darth Vader, of course. This is Satan. This is Hades. Any kind of villain, Emperor Palpatine. The Beast when he was mean, and then the Beast when he was nice was the hero kind of thing. Although Belle was kind of the hero in Beauty and the Beast. But this character, the villain, the Joker, currently, it gives the hero something to fight against, frankly, because stories would be pretty boring if it was just driving around in a plane, nobody's chasing you, kind of thing. Okay, 6, we have the Magician or the Trickster. Magician or the Trickster. And here, these are often side characters, but they add a lot of interest in Greek mythology. If you know that, think of Hermes, Mercury. Think of Loki from Norse, and I guess from Marvel as well, where he helps sometimes he doesn't. He's just mercurial. That's hence the term. You can't figure out what he's going to do. Yoda's kind of like this. In some ways, R2-D2 is kind of like this. Where you've got these little characters like, if you know Mulan, that dragon that's sort of pulling this stuff out of his hat. Merlin, any kind of magician, actual magician kind of thing, works there. In the Bible, this is probably some of your sorcerers and things like that cast spells, especially in the Old Testament kind of thing. And then finally, number 7, we have the child God. And this is the one that is rescued, usually by the hero. They are the what's the word? The hope for the future, the vision for the future. Luke Skywalker gets saved so many times in Star Wars by other people. This is Cinderella, all those princesses that sit there, fall asleep, or get knocked out, or trapped, or whatever, and have to get rescued, are child God characters. This is Joseph in the Bible, with the coat of many colors. Arguably the Jewish people, I suppose, get saved by Moses. You see this in mythology a great deal, people that are rescued by someone else, but who have divine properties. Arguably, I suppose, Jesus as a child, especially because he was the wise men coming and the whole, let's take him out of here, and so he doesn't get killed, and so on and so forth. So, anyway, so the point is that these things all exist in this collective unconscious, and they can be used in stories to make points. We get entertained by it, but we also draw truths when you think about how do you treat other people, how do you parent, how do you be a lover, whatever kind of thing, they often come from these archetypes that we use without even thinking about it, honestly, every day, I suppose. So I'd be aware of these, be able to provide some examples on your own, and think about how they relate to your life and to popular culture and all that kind of thing. Okay, so if you have any questions about that, let me know. But this will be the last lecture I give you before this quiz. And I said I'll post the stuff starting either tomorrow or next week. Okay, well, take care of yourself. Have a good evening, and I'm off.